I went into this movie thinking this will be a fun way to spend the afternoon. I didn't expect to come out absolutely loving it. Hi, my name is Chris. I am your friendly neighborhood Baba Duchess, and today I am talking about the movie The End of Oak Street. The premise is pretty simple. Your average suburban 80s family wakes up one morning to find out that they and their entire neighborhood are now in the middle of a prehistoric setting, complete with dinosaurs roaming around their neighborhood. They need to figure out what is going on, but most importantly, what they have to do to survive. This was directed by David Robert Mitchell, who also did It Follows. And you will see a lot of horror elements throughout this movie, even though it is not actually a horror movie. It's actually categorized as anything but. It's got mystery, thriller, adventure, survival, but honestly, I would also put kind of a subcategory as survival horror. Because while the main theme is about family coming together, neighbors coming together, you also have this very real threat. And even though this is PG-13, it does not shy away from the horrors that a dinosaur invasion would bring. Obviously, it's not overly graphic, but you do get the point. And I'm sure producers, promoters, whatever, probably wanted to steer clear of putting any sort of horror category on this for fear that it might keep some people away, which on one hand I do get because, like I said, it is not overall a horror movie, but it does have those elements. But all of that being said, this really was a perfect summer movie just because it really did have a little bit of everything. The beginning of this movie sets everything up very well. We are at a neighborhood block party, so you see all the neighbors interacting with each other, who kind of likes each other, who kind of doesn't, but you also get a really good look at our main family, where you have Ewan McGregor and Anne Hathaway as the parents and their two children, Audrey and Brian. And you see where on the outside they look kind of like this perfect family, but on the inside, the parents they're having trouble. Very relatable and also not overdone. I know in a lot of these kinds of movies, sometimes they can overplay kind of the drama between the parents, but this one did feel very real. Although sometimes I would like to see a family in these situations where the parents actually are getting along, but then you kind of have less drama. So I get it. But like I said, in this one, it does work very well, feels very real. And despite the problems between the parents, this is a very close family. And as I mentioned before, this does take place in the 80s. It is 1982. And what I really did appreciate about this movie, as someone who was 6 at that time, it really did feel like the 80s. They didn't overdo it with all like the neon and big hair, which honestly really came out more in the mid to late 80s, because I remember lots of brown paneling and lots of green gold color rugs and furniture kind of left over from the 70s. So this really felt authentic and not gimmicky. And it does come complete with men, especially Ewan McGregor, wearing short shorts, which was the style at the time. If you watch something like Sleepaway Camp and you see all the short shorts, that's not for effect, that's not for being silly. People really wore them. But yes, in the beginning, we get to know everybody. There's a little bit of conflict between Anne Hathaway and their neighbor because of Anne Hathaway and their family's dog, Starbuck. Very normal neighbor stuff. In the middle of the night, Brian wakes up. There's some weird, strange light. And when they wake up the next morning, power's off, no water. So they're just thinking maybe this is some sort of, outage. And then we see dinosaurs running around. Very simple. And I do like that the family is pretty smart from the beginning. They know that they are going to need supplies and they're also going to have to figure out what is going on. Ewan McGregor and Anne Hathaway are very good as the leads. I really believed how much, they cared about these kids and that they wanted to make sure that they survive at all costs. In a way, I would kind of describe this movie as a combination of like Stranger Things and Jurassic Park. And I like that this was clearly an homage to movies of the 80s, especially Steven Spielberg movies. I like the score in this movie because it was very John Williams esque without being an outright copy of it. And there were some obvious nods to Jurassic Park, but without going full on like rip off. There's one part where you fully expect them to say, that's one big pile of shit. Of course, they don't, but you know what they're getting at, which in a way made it funnier. And there's also another scene where, again, you kind of expect to see the big eye in the window with the pupil dilating and all that. You think they're going to go there, but then they don't. And again, it kind of makes it more fun. To me, that's what a tribute or a love letter to a certain genre or a movie should be, because you can't recreate it, and nor should you want to. I really like the look of the dinosaurs. As we learn more about dinosaurs and more about the fact that maybe we really don't actually know what the outside looked like, these had more of a feathery look to them. The school of thought behind the design seemed to be more of the, birds coming from dinosaurs. So the feathers. And it's a small thing, but I did like the play on words with the end of Oak Street, where you could mean like the very literal, you come to the end of it because they can't go any further. And also, like, could this just be the end of their neighborhood in general? But what really works with this movie is that you do care about these characters. You see how much they care about each other, how much they love each other, how much they want to protect each other. And again, it feels like a real family. You want them to make it through this. There also is the subplot where the family's dog has taken off and they haven't seen it since all of this started. So you have the son, Brian, who really is also searching for his dog throughout this. And I will link it in the description. There was an article that Variety put out that they were talking to Anne Hathaway, and she was saying how any movie that does anything to the dog should be rated R. This movie is rated PG-13, so take that what you will. I don't want to do spoilers. But the thing I found not funny, haha, about it was, okay, so we have all this about dogs, but apparently, and this is semi-spoilery, but not really, screw the cats, I guess. I mean, at least let's be consistent about animal cruelty in the movies. I mean, no one likes it. And I do try to warn people if there is animal cruelty in a movie. But I also think there can be a way that it's done that can at least be a little bit sensitive. Because to me, that's a difference between a movie like this, where you might see something, and a movie like Evil Dead Burn, which, and I did say this in my review, when they had violence against a dog, that was just kind of a screw you to the audience that I did not appreciate. That took the tone of more of, haha, this is what we're doing to this animal. And most other movies, if there is a scene like that, which does include violence in animals, it doesn't have that kind of nasty, we just want to put this in your face to mess with you feel to it. So I just wanted to put out a warning for this. There really isn't a lot. But I mean, you've got animals in the neighborhood and you've also got dinosaurs. So it's not hard to put two and two together. But I also just wanted to mention that article simply because they made it specific about the dogs, but I guess we don't care about cats or other animals. But in the end, this is just a really solid movie about, a family just trying to get through this very strange ordeal. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's about an hour and 39 minutes. And you will get a little bit of everything: family drama, thriller, survival, mystery, and dinosaurs running around and attacking people. But overall, it is lighthearted, fun, just what you want in a summer movie. It's not completely mindless, but not overly serious. I think my biggest issue is there's a little fuzzy logic at the very end. There's a couple things where maybe if you pull the thread, that doesn't quite work out. But you know what? Yeah, I pulled on a thread or two, but honestly, at the end, I don't care. I give this one 4 top hats. If you were kind of on the fence about it, I say go take a chance and see it. It's got something for everybody. I've seen people say how this is the best Spielberg movie not made by Spielberg, and I would definitely take this one over Spielberg's Disclosure Day. So thank you for listening to my thoughts on this movie. As always, like, share, subscribe, comment. All of that really helps me out a lot. I've taken a little bit of a break, but I will have more videos coming out regularly. And remember, like what you like, don't be a dick. And empathy is a superpower.